Okay, folks. I made a mistake on the earlier run and I deleted it because I didn't think it reached the quality of what I generally produce. So I'm going to do a retake of my collection, part Cuatro. And of course, I'm going to start with the wonderful collection of short stories by Anton Chekhov called Ward Number 6 and Other Stories, 1892 to 1895. And it's appropriate that it starts out with Ward Number 6 because it is an outstanding and very moving short story. Reading it is quite an experience. And the other short stories in the collection are excellent, as Chekhov's short stories are. And I highly recommend this volume of short stories by Penguin. Very good, well translated. Love the painting in the front. Looks great. Very, very, very valuable work. Next up is again one of my favorite authors, Honoré de Balzac, and this is History of the 13. This is a series of novellas, 3, that tie together certain characters like Ferragus and the Duchess de Langeais. And basically it's about an oligarchic society that basically runs society and not necessarily controls wealth, but hoards wealth. And it's very modern and very astute of Balzac to write this trilogy. It's very good. I highly recommend it to anyone. Balzac was well ahead of his time. This is a great book. I like the little painting in the front. They're playing. It looks like chess. No, checkers. Some kind of thing. I don't know. Great book. Wonderful read. Balzac is outstanding. Okay, here's a book. Kind of an outlier in my collection. F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Beautiful and Damned. And this book is a rather lurid book about declining marriage and declining times. And it's a much better work, in my opinion, than Great Gatsby. It's much more realistic. It's not so bloated with detail and other stuff. It's much better written. And this is an excellent novel. It really gives a true picture of the 20s that F. Scott Fitzgerald really focused on. It's a better work, much more focused. All right, next up is a rather sloppy historical novel by Robert Graves called I, Claudius. He portrays him as an nincompoop and all this other stuff, but he was also an airy scholar who liked to write histories and stuff like that, which is true that he did write histories. But the idea that he wasn't a calculated mass murderer, which he really was, if you ever read Tacitus and his Roman histories, where he talks about Claudius and how he was much more bloodthirsty than all the emperors before him and after. He was worse than Nero, his successor. But you see none of that in Graves. You just see a learned chap who likes writing histories and is ruled by his wife and etc., 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 which is ridiculous when he killed he had a couple of his wives killed by his henchmen. Of course, he didn't do it because he was a coward. That was Claudius. Now, I had to have my personal opinion on that one. Hey, it's my collection and my what I would like to say about it. Okay, here's a classic. James Boswell, The Life of Samuel Johnson. A wonderful book. But the wonder in it is that there's more of Boswell in this than Johnson, even when the subject matter is mainly Samuel Johnson. Boswell bleeds through. Because Samuel Johnson himself great writer and thinker as he is, and even a good mentor, was not a very good man. Very crotchety, very uptight, stuck up, that kind of stuff. But this book is very interesting and a very good read. It's like a table talk thing where they talk and all that stuff. You get to hear his opinions on things. It's pretty interesting. Good stuff. All right, next up is one of the best medieval histories. Gregory of Tours, The History of the Franks. Outstanding work from the 6th century AD. About various wars and stuff like that, and a little stuff that goes on in the court of the French king. And it's pretty good. Here's the cover photo is Saint Denis cutting his cloak in half to help a beggar. And that's a pretty neat medieval work there. Love that. Great book, nice history. If you're interested in that period of time, I would highly recommend it. And even if you aren't, I would highly recommend it still. Next up is a great series of novellas, which are basically extremely long, not extremely, but long short stories. The Complete Prose Tales of Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin. And Pushkin not only was a great poet and playwright, but he was a great prose writer. And the more Peter the Great, excellent. Dabrowski, very good. The Queen of Spades is a classic, outstanding. Captain's Daughter is a wonderful book. The Shot is a classic. The Blizzard is wonderful. And even The Squire's Daughter is excellent. Good stuff. I mean, there's really nothing that Pushkin couldn't write well. I highly recommend this volume. It's published by Norton. Has some criticism in the back, where they talk about the nature of the work and stuff like that. It's pretty good. By the way, today I am wearing my very comfortable Skechers shoes, and I'm wearing a Stalin t-shirt, one of my favorite historical figures, a great man who's been dishonestly maligned by a lot of fascists in the West who hate the fact that he helped his country defeat the Nazis, and they'll never forgive him for it. But that has nothing to do with my book, so I'll go on to my books. Next up is a trilogy, kind of similar in the strain to Herman Brock's The Sleepwalkers. 3 parts called Loving, Living, and Party Going. And each work, much like Brock's, each of the sections is written in a distinctly different style, matching the subject matter. And it is an outstanding work. The first book is excellent. Living is a tough row to hoe when you first start reading it, because the style is jarring. It's so different, and it's not like normal fiction is written. Normal prose is written. Normal fictional prose. But this book is outstanding, and I love the cover with the peacock. Look at that. And it's a tremendous work. I think that anybody that I dropped it. Fumble. That anybody that gets this is going to be very happy they got it. Okay. Next up is a outstanding novel by Frau Rolf, or AKA pen name Baron Corvo, Hadrian VII. It's about a theological seminary student who writes a paper about the corruption of the modern church and how the papacy is running on hard times, and it's not upholding the apostolic mission that it had. And lo and behold, a cardinal somehow gets the paper and he reads it, and then then the Pope dies, and then they congregate and they have to elect a new Pope, and they do 3 votes and they can't decide on somebody. So this guy comes up and says, "Hey, how about this guy?" And it's the student that wrote the paper, and he is made the Pope. And of course, the Pope is styled after the man who wrote the novel Friar Wolf, who is of course a seminary student. It's a very funny and rewarding book. It's hilarious. It's serious, but it's a very good read. Very, very interesting stuff. Rolf really wrote a very entertaining book here. All right, here's another Heinrich Böll book that I have not read, called Billiards at 9:30. Again, Böll is always great, but I can't get around to reading all of his books, so I'll just put it back. But I'm sure I can't wait to get to it. Next up is a wonderful book that I read probably about 3 years ago. It's by John Bossy, and it's called Giordano Bruno and the Embassy Affair, and it's about 16th century espionage and how the great philosopher and hermeticist writer Giordano Bruno was in England and actually a spy for the Catholics in Protestant England under Elizabeth I. And this is a very interesting read, and he makes a lot of good points. And there's, he never says that it's it's a slam dunk, but he gets close to, maybe you consider that this might be a true scenario. Very interesting book nonetheless. A lot of good history in it, regardless of the plot that he delineates or perhaps creates. But it's still a great read. Still a great read. And next up is Heinrich Böll's The Clown, which of course I have not read. But you read one Böll, you read them all. Hey, no, I'm going to get around to it. But, and it's of course about a clown and mime. And I imagine it's very interesting, and I'll probably get around to it in January. Not that I plan these things, but I just have a hunch that I will. Okay, next up is probably Balzac, outside of Peragorio. This is, I think, his best, but most would say Peragorio. Lost Illusions by Balzac. And look at this cover. It's so outstanding. Look at the stylish hair, the little tie on his neck, and the band, and the cane. Great stuff. Again, money. A provincial young man, Lucien Chardon, later adopts a fake royal title, Lucien de Rubempre, and he pretends to be a royal, and he tries to rise in the salons of Paris under the influence of women, because at the time the salons were ran by women, and they had a lot of power in French society. And this book, it delineates that very well, and with rich detail. It is very well written, and it is a great book. All right, next up, coming to the end here, I got one more to go after this one. On the Marble Cliffs by Ernst Junger, kind of a nice abstract painting here on the front. This is basically considered a study of tyranny, and I guess it's Ernst Junger's attempt to write an apologia through a novel for his own Nazi sympathization during World War II. It is an interesting read just for that fact alone. But Junger, despite being a fascist, was a great writer. And it is a very interesting work and a very valuable historical document. It's basically in the vein, in a serious vein, but much like the Hamsun book that I talked about earlier in an earlier episode on Overgrown Paths. But it's very serious and much better written. All right, here we go with one of my favorite authors, Lawrence Stern, writer of Tristram Shandy, great novel. A Sentimental Journey with Journal to Eliza and Political Romance. Lawrence Stern, whatever he sets to writing, is always going to be entertaining and hilarious. And A Sentimental Journey is a wonderful book. It's not as good as Tristram Shandy, but there are not many books out that are as good as Tristram Shandy. But A Sentimental Journey is great, and I highly recommend it. And this this Oxford World Classics version also tacks on Journal to Eliza and Political Romance, which are also very excellent and entertaining to read. Stern is always fun, and he's very smart. I mean, there's a lot of inside jokes, a lot of entendre, stuff like that. He's just a great writer. And that'll be it for today, and I very much thank anyone who watches these, and have a great day.